This episode of Crowdscene was recorded back when the show was called Kickstars. So every time you hear the words Kickstars, think Crowdscene. You can now find us at crowdsceneshow.com and also follow us on Twitter at crowdsceneshow. Thanks for listening.
Kickstars.
In this episode, we're joined by Thane Richard, the COO of Outernet, the new company with a hugely ambitious plan. They're trying to solve one of the world's great challenges. How do you bring information to people in the remotest corners of the world?
You know, how many Einsteins or other great inventors are out in places that are disconnected right now and are going to go, untapped because their intellect will never fully develop because they just can't get the type of information that they need.
Kickstars, gonna kick it with Pete and Mike. Kickstars, interviews behind the hype. Kickstars.
Hi there.
Hello.
Welcome to Kickstars, the show about successful crowdfunding campaigns and the people who make them happen. I'm Michael Ogden.
And I'm Peter Dean.
In each episode of Kickstars, we speak with people who have taken a risk by turning an idea of theirs into reality, by raising money on a crowdfunding platform. But what did it take to reach their goal? I like to hear the story behind the idea and discover what it meant to find success.
And I'm interested in how you design and plan a successful campaign, as well as what our guests have learned along the way. We'll talk about some of the factors that can make or break a campaign.
So in this episode, we're joined by Thane Richard, the COO of Outernet, the new company with an incredible mission to broadcast the most important content of the web to the 2/3 of the world, just over 4 billion people that do not have access to the internet.
Getting the internet in some form to these people puts Outernet up against some big competitors. Facebook, for example, wants to use a fleet of drones, and Google wants to use weather balloons. But those are both long-term plans. Outernet is doing something now, and they're doing something different. It's not two-way internet access, it's more like an offline library, accessible to anyone, anywhere.
And the role of our guest Thane is a big one. He gets to decide what content gets broadcast, and we'll talk about that. And their crowdfunding campaign was ambitious too. Outernet wanted to fund a receiving device called Lantern that would shine the light of information into remote corners of the world. And because it works offline, the Lantern could provide life-saving news during natural disasters, making it an essential addition to one's emergency disaster kit.
The project has already hit the headlines. They've been featured on the BBC, Wired, CNN, and lots of others. So Outernet's goal on Indiegogo was to raise $200,000 to bring Lantern into the world. And almost 7,000 backers took the total up to $626,000, an impressive result. So let's find out how they did it.
So Thane will be sharing his insights and crowdfunding tips. But first, let's hear his story. Thane Richard, welcome to Kickstars.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Hey, congratulations on the success of your campaign.
Thank you very much. It is extremely humbling to see so much support pour in for Outernet.
Well, let's put this into context. Can you tell us about Outernet and explain how the Lantern fits in?
Definitely. So Outernet we began operations last year, just almost exactly a year ago, June 1st, 2014. And it was started by our founder, Syed Karim, who's the CEO. And he's been actually thinking about this problem for a few years. And that problem is information access. So the most pervasive internet or pervasive information tool of our time is the internet. You can think of it as being the largest library ever built. But the internet, the problem with it is that it only reaches about a third of humanity right now. 4.3 billion people, more than half of our species, cannot access the internet. And when you think about those who can access the internet, half of them are accessing some form of either heavily censored or moderately censored or monitored internet. So only about 2 out of 10 people on Earth have access to a truly free or open internet. So I think for many of your listeners, for me, when I first came across Outernet, and even still, when I'm talking to people or trying to convey the enormity of that statistic, I think it was hard for me to wrap my head around. And I think it's hard for a lot of people to really empathize with that because we live, especially any of your listeners who are downloading this podcast through the internet, it's very hard for us who are so inundated with this constant stream of information to really understand what most of the rest of the world is like on a day-to-day basis.
You mentioned when you first heard of Outernet. I mean, can you tell us about that, how you first heard about it and how you got involved?
So I was hired to cover the Indian general election last spring. So I was over in India. I lived in India for just about 3 years previously over a period of time. And I was hired to go back there. So I was there. Their elections aren't like elections in the United States where it all happens on one big election day. It happens over the course of 6 weeks, polling stations all over the country. And this was the largest election in human history, the largest democratic moment on Earth ever, which was pretty neat. And so I was there on the campaign trail, and a friend of mine forwarded me this posting at Outernet, and I was talking to Syed and interviewing and chatting about his vision and my thoughts about it and how I thought I could play a role while I was on the campaign trail. I think at the time I was in Ahmedabad on my way to Varanasi, where it was so hot. It was 115 degrees Fahrenheit. And I looked up that that's hot enough to be included in a recipe.
Wow.
Frying some eggs that day while speaking to Syed.
Yeah, totally.
And so what did Syed say to you that made you change your life?
Wow. That's a powerful way of putting it, but that really is how it happened. He told me about this problem, and like I said, I'd never thought about it that way. Even as pervasive as cell phones are in India, I believe it's like 14% of Indians have a data account or access to the internet. So it's still quite low, but it's a regular news item in India that mobile phone penetration is always growing. But the enormity of the problem is first what Syed captured me with. And then he went on to say, imagine if we could solve that problem, what that world would look like if everybody on Earth could access courseware or health information, or could receive disaster alerts before they happen, or after they happen, receive updates on critical information to stay safe or to stay healthy. If anyone could learn to code, if anybody could learn to read, and once they can read, what would they read about? And so when you have only a third of humanity able to fully reach their potential in this way, think of all the things we've accomplished with that as a species, with that as our foundation. Imagine all the things we could accomplish if every single person had those resources. What diseases could we cure? What inventions would we create? If our entire intellectual capacity were completely unleashed. How many Einsteins or other great inventors are out in places that are disconnected right now and are going to go, untapped because their intellect will never fully develop because they just can't get the type of information that they need. And so that's what made me go, oh shit. Okay. Sign me up.
At that stage, was Lantern in prototype, or was that just the gleam in Syed's eyes? Where was Lantern at?
Lantern was at a stage of engineering. An engineering feasibility study had been done, and it had been tested to prove that it would be functional. So we began that prototyping process. Syed already had several technology partners in place who he was bringing together to work on this project. The Lantern itself is it's one product, one receiver, one kind of aspect of Outernet. The larger picture being that signal in general that can be received by multiple receivers, of Lantern just being one. And the idea, and this was, I think, pretty important, at least for selling me, was that you don't actually have to buy a receiver from Outernet to receive the Outernet signal. It's not locked like a mobile phone signal is locked to a carrier. We, in fact, since the first day we turned on a signal, which was August 11th of last year, we turned on a signal covering North America so that we could test our equipment and continue to improve. But then we also held a vote for where we should turn on the second signal, and over 30,000 people voted. And 75% of those votes came from Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, which I suspected had something to do with the Arab Spring and
Right,
the choking of information flow that happened as a result of that. So we turned on those signals on August 11th. And from day one, we publish instructions on how you can go and build your own receiver from components that you can find on the web or locally. And we think that's really important because we don't think that whether it's through Lantern, through Indiegogo, or after Indiegogo when we sell it in our store, that we can reach these very hard to reach places. I think that would be obscenely arrogant to say that we could, the small company could get our product to every corner of the earth. We'd love to. It's going to be, we hope it is a great revenue stream, but and I think it has already shown that it will be, but we think that the best way to solve this problem is to just make it an open standard, because Lantern may not be the best solution for all places. Lantern has solar panels built into it. Maybe power availability isn't the big problem in this one particular region. And so a manufacturer there locally can make a receiver without the solar panels, without included batteries, that allows it to be cheaper and hit the price point of those residents much better. I sort of compare it to a radio station. If we are focused on the signal and what we're broadcasting, what radio station do you know makes their own radios?
So Thane, a couple of things. Can you just go into a tiny bit more detail about how you are broadcasting the signal at the moment? I believe you're currently piggybacking on some other people's satellites, but you have plans to launch your own satellites in the future. And I'd also like to hear about, if you could describe for our listeners what the Lantern looks like and what features it has and how someone might use that.
Sure. So we do currently use the capacity of existing satellite operators. It's all for us about just moving what is the fastest, cheapest way to solve this problem of information access. And the internet's like two services bundled into one. You can think of it as the world's largest library of information that you can access and sort of download. And then it's also the world's largest community forum, communication platform, or what you can upload to other people. So when you think about solving the problem of information access, the upload part is actually the most difficult. It's like you have to build, using terrestrial networks, you have to get a cable or you have to get something. You have to build a road or a driveway to every person on Earth. You have to get them within range of a terrestrial network. And so what we're saying is, well, why not the airline industry? Roads aren't necessarily the best way to reach everyone. And so we can, if we cut out the upload side, most of the way you consume the internet, most of the way that we all consume the internet is through the consumption of content, through the download of content. And so if we jump to that, we can provide an extremely valuable service right away. And so pursuant to that goal is, getting capacity on a rocket, buying the satellites. It's all a very time-consuming, expensive process. It's getting cheaper. It's getting shorter with the commercialization of space. But it's just easy for us to move quickly to rent capacity. And so that's what we've done. We are live currently on 4, I'll just say coverage zones. We're live in North America, all of Europe, pretty much into, past the Urals, into Russia. We cover the Middle East. We cover North Africa and all of sub-Saharan Africa. So,
and the plan is to blanket the world eventually, or to cover the whole world.
Yes, and we plan to do that this summer.
Pete is so hard to please. You just covered up most of the globe there, and Pete's like, yeah, and
How big is Lantern? It's only a few inches tall, isn't it?
But yeah, it's a pretty small device. It's designed to be pocket-sized. The antenna is less than 4 inches, and that is, we want this to be something that you can take anywhere in the world and receive a continuous stream of essential information. And we were able to fund it enough to increase our launch capacity on a daily basis to 10 megabytes per day, which doesn't seem like much, but if you compress data, you can actually get quite a bit into 10 megabytes per day. You can get an ebook, like a short TED Talk, 5 academic journal articles, 6 weather maps, 350 Wikipedia articles, 2,000 tweets, and 5 or more news stories from every country on Earth.
And people will be building their libraries at home or within their communities as well. So they won't just get 10 megabytes a day and that's it. They'll get 10 megabytes that they can save.
Correct.
Right.
But part of your role, Thane, is deciding what content that is.
Yeah.
It's a lot of responsibility.
Well, I don't know.
Taking his stride.
2/3 of the entire world don't have access to the internet, and you get to decide what they do see.
Yeah.
I think that is a little Orwellian, maybe a little bit like 2001: A Space Odyssey, or
we're overstating it.
Yeah.
Pick your sci-fi. But I also want to say that Lantern works off our mobile signal, but the mobile signal is you sacrifice a little bit in throughput of data to get that smaller antenna size, right? So to get that mobility and the portability factor of Lantern, you're going to give up a little bit of download. But the other important thing about Lantern is that it has that coax plug on it to allow it to be plugged into a satellite dish. And so that's our other service. If you point a satellite dish at one of our satellites, you get we're going to be increasing it. It started at 200 megabytes per day last summer. It's going to be over a gigabyte per day by the end of this summer. So Lantern can be versatile in that regard. It can be mobile or it can be fixed and get more data.
Has your sense of what news is, has that changed dramatically given your involvement with Outernet?
I would say the news industry has changed considerably since I was consuming news in middle school or high school in Montana. I was really bad asthmatic when I was a kid, so I didn't do sports. Instead, I did speech and debate. Mm-hmm. And so the particular event I did, extemporaneous speaking, we had to cut out articles in all the major publications all the time and file them in file boxes and bring them to meets, on dollies. So being up to speed on current events was a requirement, just like going jogging every morning. It would be a requirement for track.
So talking of cutting out articles, how do you decide what content should be included and what should not be included on Outernet?
That was the best segue I've heard in a long time.
Thanks. I thought it was pretty good myself.
That was a seamless transition. I love it.
Hey, it's what I do.
Very cool. Cutting out articles to cutting out articles.
Yeah.
So we get this question a lot, right? People, when they hear about the broadcast nature of Outernet, which I'll also say is that there is a way to send a small amount of information back that we're working on. And the one-way aspect of the datacast does not really change the user experience much at all. Everything in Outernet can look and feel just like a website.
Okay.
Because of your internet connection, whenever you get a website, it's just a one-way push of information. Once you've requested it, it's all pushed to you. So in that regard, there's really no difference. But I always get this question of, okay, if it's a one-way broadcast, if I use the radio analogy, who's the DJ or who's the gatekeeper, who decides? And people say, oh, it's you, Thane.
Yeah.
Which is only partially true. There's the Outernet editorial component of what we broadcast. And in response to a lot of this curiosity, criticism, conspiracy theory sometimes, I think it's funny, a lot of what we deal with at Outernet is people wondering whether we're actually real or whether we're a hoax, which I kind of, at first I was like, come on. But then I thought, well, it is such an audacious proposition that, the people, I guess it could be good hoax material, but it's not a hoax. But to settle some of that skepticism, in December, I sat down and just wrote like 40 pages of our broadcast guidelines. And it's a public Google Doc that anybody can look at so that people can understand why we'll choose to have a particular piece of content on Outernet, why some content won't be on Outernet, like porn, why that's just not what we're into. in building humanity's public library. And I highlighted in a blog post, in case you don't want to sit down and read 40 pages, a blog post of kind of these bigger editorial dilemmas that we face. You know, it's not always so black and white what should go on. Mm-hmm. And so I'll talk about those editorial dilemmas, but I think more broadly, we've already accepted as a society that a group of editors can make decisions about what content is placed in a public forum on the public's behalf. That's how any newspaper works. It's how any radio show works, or NPR or the BBC. It's how any TV program works within, you know, when you have a constrained medium, whether it's column inches or broadcast time, in our case, broadcast bandwidth of data, everything can't go through that pipe, and somebody has to decide. And so
you mentioned the BBC. I mean, of course, so part of their mandate is they've got to represent different cultures. And one of your things you look for are things that are going to be helpful to people in a jam, or what is some of the criteria?
Yeah, emergency disaster relief is a big one. In fact, our CEO Syed was just in Nepal 2 weeks ago demoing an Outernet receivers for UNICEF as part of the earthquake relief effort there, and how Outernet could be used in the future in case another such disaster were to happen. When an earthquake strikes and it takes out a terrestrial network of cell towers, if each one of those cell towers, for example, had an Outernet receiver on it, if the tower were still working, so if the tower were still able to talk to people's cell phones, but it just lost its connection to the main grid, those people would still be able to get information through Outernet.
Right.
Or if you have relief camps set up, you could go and deploy an Outernet receiver super quickly, whether it's a lantern on the mobile signal or our other device, Pillar, on the fixed signal with a dish. You can create these. We called it Pillar because we saw it being a pillar of knowledge in situations exactly like that. So
if I have a lantern in my back pocket and there's a disaster, I can use it, but can Pete use it as well? Is he able to access that?
Yeah, so Lantern receives the files from space and it stores them on its internal drive locally. So like you said earlier, it's not 10 megabytes per day. That's like live, like a live news broadcast. It's more like BitTorrent. You know, it's downloading and caching locally on your Lantern device. You then get to set parameters. If you have a limited amount of storage, a few gigabytes. If you expand it, you can make it as big as you want, and say, I only want content in English about news in video, if you want to be really specific, or add other types of parameters. So, and then when you want to share it, you turn on Lantern's hotspot and it becomes like a Wi-Fi hotspot.
Got
and
it.
So
yeah,
you could both connect and browse it in your phone or your tablets or any Wi-Fi enabled device's browser. So your user device doesn't require any additional software. It browses like it's a web page or like it's the internet.
Thane, some countries put limits on the kinds of information that their people can have access to. How do you deal with that?
I would say in those scenarios, we view the access to information the same way that the UN Charter, the Declaration of Human Rights, views information, is that it is a human right for everyone to have unimpeded, free access to information, and allow them to, and everybody should be able to use that information to improve their lives. So whether that's for Americans who are concerned about the NSA surveillance, Outernet as a one-way datacast. Think about your FM radio. When you turn on your radio in your car, there's no way for anyone to know that you've turned it on or what you're listening to. Same thing with Outernet, but with data. So right. In America, I think there's a pretty sizable population of people who are concerned about that. And I think in other parts of the world, it's a similar problem to those who don't have information at all, is filling in this desert of information with, I guess you could say that we're kind of building just little oases everywhere.
And watching people use the Lantern for the first time and gaining access to so much new information, that must have been special. Can you tell us about one of your more memorable experiences?
So one of them I experienced remotely, the other one I experienced personally. And the one remotely was when our CEO went to Kenya, a village, Lamet Umoja, and demoed a pillar, not a lantern. So pillar plugs into a satellite dish. Mm-hmm. And the photos on Twitter were unreal. Moving. Thousands of people showed up. Like there, you can see a photo of this auditorium packed with school children, and then you can see the windows outside are like 5 or 6 people deep of just watching. One of the cabinet ministers from the Kenyan government came out to the village and showed up. They had like a parade through the village with an Outernet poster, and we only installed 2 devices. We installed one in the chief's home, and we installed one in the computer center of the school. And it was an early test. We didn't have a ton of content streaming over Outernet yet. Mm-hmm. And I'd say the user interface needed some work, and we're doing that right now. So, but even then, the excitement, I could feel it halfway around the world. The whole team could. We're all remotely based around the world. Though I just moved to Chicago last week, so we could set up our head offices here.
And what kind of information were they hungry for? Was it football scores?
I'm sure there was a football scores component, absolutely. But I think the school administrators would tell you that it would be textbooks and educational materials and things like that. But yeah, everything. I think entertainment and sports, all of it is an end in itself, right? We're talking about not just education or disaster relief. I think all of those are subpoints to a bigger one, which is quality of life, where entertainment is certainly an important end as well. The one personally was last week, I installed a device in a remote, I say remote, and I'm doing those quotes with my fingers. If you could call them a colony, it's a nonprofit in the heart of Detroit that does not have any water, electricity, or sewage or internet. And so I thought that was super interesting. And because it doesn't have any of those things, it actually matches our target audience in developing countries to a T. But it's in the heart of what one could argue was the Silicon Valley of 50 or 60 years ago in the United States. Prior to 1960, many of the large tech innovations were coming out of Detroit. It helped win World War II when the Ford factory converted into making munitions. So, and now I just moved from Detroit to Chicago. Now you can drive through Detroit and just find just barren wasteland. And this is where this particular nonprofit is set up. And they're super excited about getting like TED Talks. They want to get some Khan Academy stuff so that some of them can finish up some education. They want to learn to code. They want movies for their movie nights. They want some music. And they're really into open source ecology, which is a content partner of ours. Farm equipment, where you can build your own farm equipment using open source plans, because they're taking these abandoned lots, they've cleaned them up, and they're turning them into urban gardens. So that was pretty neat. And
you're going to have there's going to be an opportunity for you guys to see what some of the results have come from, I guess, directly using Outernet, and people are finding this information and then building new things. That's going to be an interesting story to play out over the next few years.
I can't wait. I just want to say one other thing about the editorial, which is the part that I or Outernet or a group of editors, which we want to be open. We want it to be like Wikipedia, where people can comment. Like I said, that document is an open Google Doc where anybody can comment on it. And we have a forum that's very active. That's only a component of the Outernet broadcast. There's a sponsored content component, which is where we make our money. In case, I think people always wonder how we make money if we're distributing the signal for free. And then we want the largest component to actually be user uploaded content. If it's above a certain file size, there has to be a fee associated with it. But think about like YouTube or a blog, your own blog, or Twitter, or any other way you share information with the world. We're enabling a way for anyone to go and share data with the rest of the world. And so there's going to be I would say probably going to be the majority of our broadcast is going to be dedicated to user selected material that passes through a community-based editorial curation process. so that there has to be some checkpoint at the end to make sure that there is not we don't want to be broadcasting like ISIS videos or, like I said, porn earlier. I think there's certain agreed upon standards for what should be broadcasted globally, publicly.
And how does Outernet make their money? I wasn't clear on that.
So we have a few ways. One is receiver sales with like Lantern,
Okay.
which we did pre-sales basically on Indiegogo, but we're going to be selling it in our store. We're launching our store this week. Not Lantern won't be available, but we'll be adding Lantern this fall. So that's one. The other is if you are a user and you want to share a file over Outernet and it's larger than what will fit into our free component, there's a fee on a per megabyte basis. Same thing if you're a large company like the World Bank or UNICEF or someone who wants to share content. We have Radio Netherlands Worldwide, who sponsors content for targeted at refugees in Syria. So that's a great example. We're really glad to have them on board. Another is advertising. Without being, I come from the editorial side, so people always cringe at advertising, but I actually think advertising can be beautiful.
It's another big question. There's a lot of curation needed there too. You wouldn't want, I don't know, Philip Morris advertising, I guess. Well, that's just done us out of getting Philip Morris as a sponsor for the podcast.
Yeah, damn, Pete.
I've blown it. Rats. I'll edit that out.
You can tell, Thane, we've got a lot more questions, but we probably should move on to crowdfunding.
Sure. Yeah, let's talk about crowdfunding. We understand that Outernet already, the company has some funding itself. So why did you decide to crowdfund Lantern?
For a few reasons. We wanted to do a little bit of a litmus test with the market. Lantern is an interesting one because on Indiegogo, the audience on Indiegogo, they're internet users. And I think we could kind of come up with, and maybe our stereotyping, putting people in boxes when it comes to what you think of your typical Indiegogo user is maybe completely off base. But I imagine it's somebody who has a little bit more disposable income to, back projects where there really isn't any guarantee of success. That's one of the things about crowdfunding is that you're kind of pledging, and going on the good faith of the individual or the company or the organization that you're backing to deliver. And we wanted to create that sense of trust with our largest supporters, or largest in the sense of most enthusiastic, not necessarily from a monetary background, because for most of the campaign, until we closed it, now it's in demand, but we had the lowest level you can contribute was $1. Mm-hmm. That's the lowest you can go. Right. And it got your photo as part of our collage of humanity, which we broadcast from space. So we wanted to make it open. We wanted those who support Outernet to be involved, and we wanted to do sort of a market test.
And why Indiegogo rather than Kickstarter?
Oh, that we went back and forth on for a while. I think ultimately we had an account manager who was talking to us at Indiegogo, and I think that was really what tipped us to be able, if there was an issue, we knew that we had somebody who we could just send an email or make a phone call to. Even though I think Kickstarter's audience is larger, I think their newsletter list is probably longer. That's what ultimately, I reached out to Kickstarter and they didn't write back.
Right. What would have happened if you hadn't crowdfunded Lantern?
We had other funding sources, or private or individual angel, seed, whatever term you want to use, funding sources available to pursue Lantern and pursue just the growth of the company. But there is some strategic thinking behind making it more public. And as far as public funding goes, I think by the time you guys air this podcast, we will have launched our investment round publicly as well. So we're going to be raising a round of funding, a seed round, and inviting. Unfortunately, the SEC hasn't changed their rules yet to allow a different type of investor. So only accredited investors, which has rules of, a certain amount of wealth or income associated with them. But if you are an accredited investor, we're going to be in that same sort of inclusive, wanting people who support the Outernet project to be able to have ownership in it, and this time actual ownership in the company, to be able to fund us.
So once you decided to do the campaign, what steps did you take to organize and launch it? Were you doing a pre-launch campaign of any kind to build your audience?
Yeah, we did a thunderclap. We did. We wanted to have a few milestones that we could point to again assuage concerns that this was a conspiracy, that this was real. We wanted to have our signal up. We wanted to have demonstrated use cases of people building their own receivers, that those work. So we made some videos about that.
Okay.
We did some exercises to build up our mail list, in Indiegogo and Kickstarter, and they have these formulas for how much of your total goal you want to raise within the first 48 hours. And if you work backwards, average conversion rate of your email list, how big do you need your email list to be in order to reach I think they say a third of your goal within 48 hours. So we worked backwards and balanced that with what we actually needed to complete the Lantern project. And
what did you find was kind of most effective? What helped you accelerate till you were ready to launch?
The biggest bump, unquestionably, not even like a distant second place behind this large bump, was whenever we made it into the Indiegogo newsletter. I think we saw like $20,000 in sales one day. Once the day we were included in their newsletter, which is, they say it's all algorithm based as part of this thing they call the go-go factor. I guess I'm not so privately being skeptical of that. I think there's a human editorial component there for sure.
Of course, yeah.
But saying it's all algorithm makes it easier to, deflect requests to be included in the newsletter. I totally get it, but maybe that really is how it works. But that's just sort of my hidden suspicion. But fortunately, I guess they liked our campaign and the algorithm checked out. We got a lot of support quickly from our list.
So your campaign goal was $200,000. How did you get to that figure?
It was part of the manufacturing costs. It was not the entirety needed to bring the product to market. We expected that we would exceed that goal by a little bit. We exceeded it way more than we thought we would. But we thought we'd probably do like $300,000 if we set a $200,000 goal. It fulfilled. It took care of a significant chunk, over 50% of development and fulfillment. More than that, more like in the order 70-80%.
Okay.
Of the cost required to actually deliver the product, develop it, and send it off to our users. But again, there were other reasons why we did the campaign.
So before you went live with your campaign, were there nerves involved? I mean, put us there in the room. Where were you? Who you with? And what was going on in your mind?
We were in a Starbucks in Birmingham, Michigan, the suburb of Detroit. It's like a posh Palo Alto-esque suburb. It's like Palo Alto without any of the cool tech side.
Okay.
What does that look like?
I kind of see it a little bit like the set of Desperate Housewives, but there's a
Starbucks
store right on the corner.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of yoga.
Okay.
But there's a Starbucks there, and that's where we were. Syed and I were sitting in the Starbucks. He stepped out for a quick meeting with a local investor and came back, and we hit go.
And had you chosen that day for any particular reason?
I honestly can't remember. I know we had pined over the day, and I think at one point we delayed it because there was like a tech conference going on. There was some like large, and maybe it was an Apple release or something that we didn't want to conflict with. We wanted to make sure that we had as much journalism exposure as possible. So finally, we just hit it. We just hit go.
This episode is sponsored by Syndicate Room, an equity crowdfunding platform in the UK. So, what does that mean? Well, in exchange for your money, you receive equity in a business. Syndicate Room is an investor-led platform. So when you invest in a company on Syndicate Room, you're doing so alongside sophisticated investors. These are highly experienced business angels. They look at these early-stage businesses, they carry out their due diligence, they value the companies, and they invest their own money. Only then does a business meet the criteria necessary and the investment is opened up to the crowd, so the crowd can invest side by side with these experienced investors. And what's the best part? You get the very same deal on the same economic terms. So visit syndicateroom.com to see the current range of opportunities so that you too can invest with the angels. Please remember that investing in early stage businesses is risky, and Syndicate Room is targeted at sophisticated investors that make their own investment decisions and understand these risks. So check it out at syndicateroom.com.
So we're talking with Thane Richard, COO of Outernet, about how they crowdfunded Lantern, the device that puts a library in every pocket. Thane, you raised over $600,000 and you hit your goal only a few days into the campaign. But was there ever a moment where you worried that you might not make it?
I don't know if we had enough time to really get that worried about it. You know, it did happen, I think, within 72 hours of us launching the campaign. I think.
Yeah.
It was definitely within the first few days.
Mm-hmm.
And we were so noses down of just doing as much outreach as possible. So we talked to the guys at Planetary Resources who did a Kickstarter campaign that was extremely successful. They raised $1.5 million on Kickstarter. And they gave us some pointers a few months out from us doing our campaign. And we talked to them specifically because theirs was satellite-based. It was, space. We were kind of talking to similar communities. And one thing that they said was the returns on social media and other advertising were like, But what they saw a big return from was reaching out to individual bloggers or people who had a strong voice within a particular community. So we reached out to a bunch of different organizations and with varying degrees of success to talk about Lantern, from like librarian listservs to teacher blogs to the maker communities to prepper blogs, digging your bunker out back or preparing for fighting the U.S. government or whatever government it may be.
Panic rooms.
Yeah. Or, we even got an article written about us in regard to how we would be an amazing tool to have during the zombie apocalypse.
Absolutely.
So
not to be underestimated. Yeah, I can see that.
Well, and here's the thing. That community is actually huge. I think, isn't Walking Dead the highest rated TV show right now?
18 million a week.
The zombie, that's a real threat. You got to think about it. And that was...
But this is why people don't think Outernet's a real thing. Because it's a tool for the zombie apocalypse.
Talking about it as a zombie tool. But, you're gonna rue the day when the zombies come and you made fun of that.
Yeah.
And you don't have your lantern. So it's all about just engaging with people and finding a way for them to want to come and learn more.
Are you using any tools to find these people that's helpful, or is it Google and just, hours of research?
I think we all wish that there was a way to take the mind numbing out of searching, but it really is just about grinding, just grinding it out, sending hundreds of emails and getting only a few responses.
Yeah.
So you just have to churn. We've tried different subject lines. We've tried different things. Just even the title of our Indiegogo campaign, Lantern, one device, free data from space forever. The amount of conversations had about those 8 words is just, it got to a point where we just had to make a decision. But what would get people to open the email? What gets people to keep reading? Especially with something like Outernet, where I think there is a learning curve that the user has to climb in order to understand what we're doing. A common misconception is that we are broadcasting Wi-Fi internet from space, which we still get. I still get messages through Indiegogo or emails to our Hello ad account, which we read every email we get, by the way. And people think it's Wi-Fi from space, which is physically impossible. Just the range of the Wi-Fi spectrum won't go that far.
Just wondering, when the money started coming in, Thane, where in the world did that money come from? Were there any surprising places, any remote countries?
The total of 113 countries gave
a lot,
over a sixth of our campaign. So I would be curious to know if that is typical, if you normally see that many countries making up such a large chunk of a campaign. I'm going to guess no. That's my guess. And I'm going to say that Outernet in that regard might be more towards the tail of the bell curve because we have a product that is inherently targeted at the countries that are usually underrepresented.
Can you describe, Thane, the best day of your campaign?
So I would say the best day of the campaign was actually the day after it ended.
Wait, that's cheating.
No. For an unexpected reason.
Okay.
Not because of the stress of it being over. I mean, we were so excited at how it was doing. One of the best days for sure was like the third day when we crossed the fundraise. But right at the end, we had like the last 72 hours. We were trying to break 500,000 because if we could break 500,000, we could increase the data throughput to 10 megabytes a day from 2 megabytes per day. So a 5x increase in data throughput. It would just allow us to afford that extra capacity. And so we were just we hit our list. I think we had to send an email afterwards and apologize to all of our newsletter subscribers. We're like, we're sorry that we harassed you.
Wow.
But we really wanted to make this target. And the moment came, the campaign closed, and we were like $20,000 short, which was sort of a bummer, you know?
Yeah.
You're never satisfied, right? You make your goal, you exceed your goal, and then you want something more, I guess. I guess that's such as life. But within 24 hours after the campaign closing, we were included again in the Indiegogo newsletter as an in-demand campaign, and we shot past 500,000 after the campaign closed. And so that was super exciting because then we could turn around back to our list because people were like, did you make it? I mean, give us an update. Did you guys get 10 megabytes? Like, that's a big deal. Yeah. And we were able to turn around and say that we did.
Thane, I noticed right at the start of the campaign, on the campaign page, there was a graphic that laid out some stretch goals that just went on and on and on, all the way up to, I think, $10 million. I'm wondering, I mean, although the campaign was obviously very successful, was there any disappointment at all that the campaign didn't raise more?
I wouldn't call it disappointment. I think whenever we could lay out, I think we had a $1 billion backer hit, or like $1 billion perk if you gave $1 billion on Indiegogo.
Oh, wow. I didn't see that.
And we wanted to do, Syed was particularly keen about that because I don't think that had ever been done before on crowdfunding. And I think it would be an interesting bank transfer to do.
It would have been.
I don't know if they could handle that. But when you set a stretch goal like that, there's always like a tinge of like, you're not going to say that if there isn't some minuscule part of you that thinks like maybe Warren Buffett will come to our Indiegogo campaign after having like a few too many Bloody Marys and just be like, yeah.
I'm gonna help those guys.
Yeah. Like, why not?
I think that's a good thought.
And so, no, I wouldn't say there's any disappointment at all. We were super satisfied with where we got. We just wanted to lay out, I mean, everything we do, from the Indiegogo campaign to our editorial guidelines to even the sources that we pick, like Wikipedia, Open, Creative Commons, who we work with. We want to be as inclusive and transparent and shareable as possible. And so part of this was saying, look, this is kind of our roadmap. This is kind of where we're headed. And if we can do all of it in the Indiegogo campaign, kick ass. But if we can't, it's not the end of the world. And we're going to keep chugging away, or not chugging. We're going to keep churning away regardless.
And building
that chugging away has a different connotation.
Churning.
Chugging away would be like what we did at the pub after we.
Oh, right, yeah. On the day after your campaign.
To celebrate, right?
Well, I mean, so what did you do on that last day? How did you guys celebrate?
I think by getting a full night's sleep.
So before we get to sharing your crowdfunding tips, Thane, I wanted to ask a bit more about staying motivated, because there's going to be tough days in a campaign. Can you talk about who or what inspires you to do what you do?
So maybe this is a little bit narcissistic, but I think that we made a sweet campaign video. Not the one, I love the one at the top of the campaign about lanterns specifically,
Mm-hmm.
but we made another video beforehand. We burned a pile of books in an abandoned Detroit factory.
Yes, I did see that, and I saw it on your Medium page actually, not on the campaign page.
That was so cool. And so we went and nitpicked that video. The video team that we hired to do it, they're super talented guys. Guys from an outfit called Motion Parade in Michigan. And they, hats off to them for putting up with our perfectionist, anal retentive, nitpicking the video. But we got it down. If you'll see, it's 1 minute and 59 seconds. We had to get less than 2 minutes, and cutting, we were like down to the tenths of the second. But we wanted to make sure that we wanted to sort of convey the problem in that video, and then the lantern video be kind of like the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And so I watched that video a lot after it was made, 'cause I just think it looks cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it, we just like going over the script too of what do you say in 2 minutes to convey succinctly what it is you're doing and why.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't say watching that video is what keeps me motivated, but I would say what keeps me motivated, distilled to its very essence, is in that video.
Mm.
I thought you wrote a very nice piece on Medium about how you felt setting fire to a pile of books, even though there was just a pile of ostensibly junk books and you were clearly making a big point by doing it. You still felt very uncomfortable setting fire to a bunch of books, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, what's the first image that comes to your mind when there's a book burning?
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's that element, but these books were going to be destroyed anyway. And we wanted to grab people emotionally. We wanted people to have that reaction, the reaction that we had when we were in that Detroit factory. We all kind of looked at each other and we're like, all right, we just doused a pile of books in gasoline. Here we go. There's no turning back. You only get to film this once.
But you're trying to visualize the stakes or make it clear what's problem you were trying to solve.
Yeah, or imagine if the ability to do this can't ever happen again. Like you can't burn books anymore.
Right.
Like the Library of Alexandria being destroyed. It's such a huge black mark on the history of our species. Think about all the great works that were lost there. Think about all the times that, even right now in the war in Syria, ISIS is going through and destroying museums and cultural sites. There was just a thing on Vice about people looting Egyptian archaeological sites and museums in the wake of the Arab Spring and the unrest there. So we can't do it with the physical objects with Outernet, but we could say that if there were free, unimpeded information available everywhere all the time, that the imagery and the power to burn books is gone. You can't do it anymore because it's meaningless. Because you burn that book, okay, I just got it for free from space. So thank you, but no thank you.
This project sounds like it became increasingly personal to you. Is that fair?
This project's extremely personal to me. I think in a startup, in a small team, you wear many hats. I mean, we joke about our titles. We do so many different things. And personal time is something that we joke about too, of, it's not weekends, weekdays, 9 to 5 is sort of funny to us, but you take time when you need time, and you grind when you need to grind, and there are expectations and you meet them, and we have aggressive milestones. And I think that anyone could look at Outernet of being around for exactly a year and a week, or 1 week after July 1st, a year out from July 1st, 2014. And we've done a lot in the last year. I'm not ashamed to say it. And yeah, I think there's an amount of pride and personal investment in that I've made. I think that I wrote a small blog post when I joined Outernet. I was still on the campaign trail, and I equated it to the election that I was covering. And I said, essentially, we cast votes and we hold elections every day in our lives. We vote on, what, from the mundane to what I'm going to cook for dinner tonight, to the major of where am I going to send my child to school? How am I going to deliver the best healthcare? What is the best food for me and my family to eat? What books should my child be reading? What should I be reading? How should I be learning about the world? What should I be passing on? How am I going to be a good ancestor? I heard that in a film recently that really stuck with me. What would you do that makes you a good ancestor? And Outernet is allowing, just like you want anybody who votes in a real political election to be informed about the candidates that they're voting for, the more informed you are about the votes you cast every day in your life, the better. And so Outernet, in that regard, is enabling us to be more informed voters all the time.
Can I ask you before we move on? I'm curious, when you embark on something like this, there's a lot of skills that you bring to the table, but there are things that you're going to be picking up along the way. What skills do you feel like you've built over the past months in making this campaign a success?
I'd say the first one that just came to mind is triage. You know, there's a lot of stuff hitting us all the time, whether it's potential partners, media, people who want free stuff because they think we're a charity, which is fine, but we're not. Learning the ability to kind of filter out, I don't want to say the noise, but I guess I am going to say the noise, and focus in on, there's only so many people on the team who only have so many waking hours to devote to so many tasks. So how are we going to prioritize that time to knowing that not everything will get done? It's just not possible. So we have to accept that, and we have to then focus on what needs to get done to drive us the furthest forward in the least period of time. So just being super efficient, and for what we can't get to, not being a dick. Because I know that from being on the bottom or being the outsider or a journalist or whoever it is, or just somebody who's interested in the project and wants to be involved or volunteer or apply for a job, to get that response of, basically like piss off or just not respond at all. I always hated that. And so we don't want to be that. And so we can't respond to every email we get, but we do read every email we get. And we consider every opinion, every comment on Facebook, every tweet I see, and every tweet that we get. We sort of divvy this up. I take Twitter, our lead software architect takes the forums, our head of programs takes our email account, and we see everything that comes in. That's not an exaggeration. It's not like, oh, well, maybe it's like 90%. We see everything. And we just have to politely decline when we can't do everything that's asked of us. And I think people understand that. I think people accept that.
What kind of challenges lie ahead for Outernet in the coming months and years? Where's Outernet going to be in 5 years from now?
Oh my gosh. We are going to... I have no idea. But I think Outernet will be in 5 years a household name everywhere in the world, where it's like your morning paper. It's like your TV station. It's a way to receive information. And hopefully what we actually do is create an ecosystem of information delivery, which, like I said before, it's not just our information that we're distributing. We want to enable people who can build. Think about like the Apple App Store. You build an app and you just deliver it over that platform, but it's your app, and you've found a way to deliver something valuable, or not. No one downloads it, but if people do, you've created something, and so we can do that on Outernet. There's no reason why not. Where you can build an app, it gets pushed over Outernet, and it uses an Outernet datacast to fill it with information that's relevant. If you're going to say right now a third of humanity has access to information, and our goal is within 5 years to unlock the other 2/3, and we've been operating at less than a third capacity for our entire history, there's not even a basis of comparison for where you can say what will be happening in 5 years if Outernet is as successful as we want to be, which we define success as getting somebody information, digital information.
And what's the one big obstacle that you could remove if Pete and I were genies and we could say, all right, we'll do that for you. We could remove so that you can get there.
I would say it is probably finding great talent, growing the team. But I also wouldn't say if you were a genie that I'd want you to grant that wish tomorrow. Because if we went from our small team to like 200 people, though I don't know if we'd ever have to actually get that big. If we just grew exponentially overnight, I think that sometimes can kill an organization. You grow too fast. But I think that that would be the wish I would grant. Or I would actually say that, or give resources to the other end of the spectrum, to our customers, of being able to put a billboard in front of everyone's face on Earth that Outernet exists. You just have to find a way to get that data. I think that's a very unique challenge for us. Is we're targeting the most disconnected people on Earth.
Yeah.
And the reason they're the most disconnected is because they're hard to reach.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
That is quite a problem.
So how do you
You're
get the word
Yeah.
out? Yes.
Fax them. Was that?
say fax them?
Yes. Send them a fax.
Yeah. The return of the fax.
You can have that one's on me. Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to take one last short break, but we'll be back in a second to hear the future of faxing and to hear Thane's advice to our listeners with top tips for crowdfunding success.
I don't know where the fax came from.
We'll be back with more Thane in just a second. Want to let you know we've got some great guests coming up on future episodes, including Kellyanne Good, designer and entrepreneur who crowdfunded her pop-up pinhole camera. You may have heard of it. It's a popular Kickstarter project that really caught people's imagination.
I'm Kellyanne Good, creative cardboard camera entrepreneur and successful crowdfunder. You can listen to my story on the next episode of Kickstars.
So that's Kelly on the next episode of Kickstars. Be sure and subscribe for that episode and more on iTunes or any of your favorite podcast apps.
So Thane, you and the Outernet team ran a really successful campaign. So what advice do you have for anyone out there, whether individuals or companies, who want to start their own campaign? Can you give us your tips for crowdfunding success?
Take them with a grain of salt. I don't think the same tips work for everybody. I would say the first one is there is no secret sauce. It's just super hard work and just sending out a ton of emails, telling as many people about your campaign as possible, and being shameless of asking for people to promote your campaign and just come look. Just watch less than 2-minute video. Do you have 1 minute and 59 seconds of your day to watch a pile of books burn in a Detroit factory? No, no one says no to that. Actually,
How can you resist?
right. Well, that was the hope. I think a lot of people did say no to it. The other one is, you can prepare as much as you like, but it's just trial by fire. And I did a small Kickstarter campaign back in 2010, which was successful. I exceeded my $5,000 goal by $500. So
That's a success.
it was a success. And then, relative to this one, it's like, oh, that's cute.
But did you apply things that you learned on that campaign to this campaign?
Not really, because that one was mostly just friends and family. And this one was, at least not my friends and family, are going to just get us to several $100,000 overnight. So
Come on, Dad.
Yeah.
right. Yeah. And here's the other one. And I think this was pretty good advice too. It's not all just about those big name publications. And we've been fortunate enough to be covered by the Fast Companies, the Wireds, the Tech Crunches, and they've done some great coverage of us. And that's a huge win as far as getting eyes on a campaign. But don't discount the small bloggers or new podcasts or whoever it may be for getting your message out there.
And do you recall, what for you was that hook, that news angle that you pushed?
The news angle that we pushed is that just the idea of the device that we are making is that, you don't have to be within a cell tower range, or you don't have to be connected to the terrestrial internet in order to receive data. You can receive it anywhere on Earth for free.
So I was just going to very quickly recap those 3 tips, Thane. But number 1, there is no secret sauce. Just tell everyone and be shameless about it. Number 2, just do it. You may not ever feel like you're 100% ready, but at some point you've just got to press that button. And number 3, it's not all about the big name media. It's not all about getting coverage from big name media, because the smaller guys, the bloggers, they can play a role too, right?
Well recapped.
That's it. Yeah.
So before we wrap up, Thane, it's time for guest picks.
Yeah, this is where our guest tells us about another crowdfunding campaign, whether past or present, something that you think is worth taking a look at. So what have you got for us, Thane?
In college, I rode my bicycle from Providence, Rhode Island to Seattle over the summer.
What?
And
Wow.
That's you buried that in the headlines.
yeah, 4,000 miles. It was a
My
fun
God.
summer. It's for an organization called Bike and Build. And there were 32 of us. I was one of 4 leaders who co-planned the route and drove the support van every 4th day. So I guess I only biked 75% of it, but did that. Had never been on a road bike before, but cycling since has been something that I really enjoy. And so I came across this campaign that I backed called the Yurka. It's the unstealable bike,
Okay.
which was fascinating to me. And it like pulls apart the main body of the bike and is able to make it lock around a pole without any sort of external bike lock device. Like the actual frame of the bike becomes the lock, which
That's clever.
is brilliant if they can pull it off. That's the thing. You kind of invest in an idea.
Can you just
that leap.
can you spell that for us, Thane?
Yurka, Yerka, and they're
Okay.
based in Chile.
Wow. Okay, and they're on Indiegogo.
They're on Indiegogo.
Okay,
Yeah, and they
cool.
wrapped up their funds on April 18th. They raised 129% of their goal.
Did you get one?
I did.
Cool.
$68,000, but they're in demand now, so you can still,
There's
buy one.
$68,000 each.
No, no. That's how much they raised.
Okay.
That's a fantastic campaign. Thank you for your tips, Thane, and thank you for those guest picks, that guest pick.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, it's been a pleasure. And listen, before we go, can you leave us with some words of wisdom? Is there a quote that keeps you inspired, some words to live by?
I have 2 favorite quotes. First one is, "History will be kind to me, for I intend to write it," by Winston Churchill.
That's particularly apt for the man who controls the internet as seen by 2/3 of the world.
I know, it almost sounds a little bit creepy now, doesn't it? But I don't see it that way. I've had that. I've always loved that since like middle school. And then the other one that I find funny, that I don't know if it's very inspirational, but I think it's witty, is "Clothes make the man. Naked people have had little to no influence on society."
Who was that?
That's Mark
That
Twain.
was that's
Oh,
Mark
Mark Twain.
Twain.
Oh, superb. I love it.
There's some truth in that.
I've not heard that one before. One final question, Thane. Obviously, we wanted to get you on the show because we want you to put this podcast onto Outernet to make sure that the entire world can download it. So I just wanted to get your okay on that before we say goodbye.
Yeah.
I think that your podcast may be above our megabyte limit at this stage.
Okay.
We're trying to do smaller files to show more churn right now, so that someone's not staring at their device for too long before something comes through.
We understand.
But
It's a stretch goal for the next campaign.
exactly,
Yes, okay.
I think that's something we could definitely talk about in the future.
Fantastic. That's
Okay,
good.
brilliant.
Look, it's been great having you on the show, Thane. Thank you for all your time and your great insights. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. Where can people go online to find out more about Outernet, and how can they go and buy a lantern?
Oh, yeah. So people can visit outernet.is, outernet.is.
Thank you so much, Thane. We wish you, Syed, and the rest of the team all the best as you continue your mission to bring the power of information to the far reaches of the world.
Well said, Pete.
Thank you very much. And I wish you all the best with Kickstars.
Thank
These
you
are
too.
interesting stories that you're finding.
Cheers.
Thank you.
All the best, Thane. So you've been listening to Kickstars, the show about successful crowdfunding campaigns and the people who make them happen. Our thanks to our guest Thane Richard for his time and his insights in this episode.
To find out more about both Outernet and Lantern, go to outernet.is. And to get in touch or hear about upcoming guests on this show, please follow Kickstars on Twitter at KickstarsShow.
If you're enjoying Kickstars, a good review on iTunes can help us reach more listeners.
And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Kickstars on iTunes or any other podcast app.
If you'd like to be a guest on Kickstars and share your story of crowdfunding success, then write to us by email at hello@kickstars.net with your name and a link to your campaign page. Our thanks to the very talented songwriter Kim Bookbinder for the Kickstars theme music. For more on Kim, do check out kimbookbinder.com. Thanks for listening.
Kickstars, gonna kick it with Pete and Mike. Kickstars, interviews behind the hype. Kickstars, Kickstars. What do you do? What do you say to make crowdfunding go your way? Kickstars, Kickstars. Kickstars, Kickstars, Kickstars. Your shake brings all the backers to the yard.
Now that's what I call epic.